Welcome to another episode of the For the Love of Cricket podcast with Jim and Akim. Today we'll be discussing quite an exciting game played in the second semi-final between South Africa and Australia. The toss went in South Africa's favours, but the conditions didn't. There was some clouds overhead, and the pitch had some moisture in it. Hence, South Africa did not decide to field first. They went with their strength. They batted. After 12 overs, they were 21 for 4, and they recovered to 212 all out. Australia crawled to victory in 45 overs.
47 overs.
In 47 overs, thanks for the correction. What was your thought on the proceedings?
Well, a lot was made about the toss and how important it would have been to South Africa for them to win the toss and bat. They actually won the toss and batted. It's funny how things turn out, but the conditions really did not favor that decision. I think it really came down to team comfort versus what the situation probably required, and they went with the comfort of the team. It then resulted in probably them making the wrong decision because they were at 21 for 4 very early into the piece. They lost key players inside the power play. They lost Quinton de Kock, they lost the captain Temba Bavuma, they lost Aiden Markram, and they also lost Rassie van der Dussen. It brought David Miller and Henrik Klaassen to the crease, and they put together a fairly good partnership. I think Klaassen's dismissal was untimely, and that was probably the difference in South Africa scoring 212 as opposed to scoring 240 or 250, which I believe would have resulted in a completely different game. That being said, credit must go to Australia's bowlers. They used the conditions very well, especially the first power play, and the seamers were brilliant. Adam Zampa struggled today, but I think Glenn Maxwell and Travis said bowled well and they complemented the seamers. In their batting effort, Australia got off to a fairly quick start, the sort of start that you need in a low-scoring game, but they then lost wickets at crucial junctures, I feel, and the game really could have turned either way at one point. It took a defiant 30 from Steve Smith, I feel, who got out in a very uncharacteristic manner. He would be disappointed in that. And then calm heads from Josh Inglis, who gave a good contribution, and Mitchell Stark and the captain Pat Cummins to see them home.
It's general knowledge that we have the South African cricket team, the Proteas, as strokers. I thought they played pretty decent cricket after those first 15 overs of the game. They played pretty well up to the end. It's as if at some point the Australians seemed to want to give South Africa the game. It's as if they were fighting themselves from choking after that initial burst from the two seamers, Stark, Hazelwood and Pat Cummins. Bavuma got a good delivery. Markram, decent delivery. Rassie van der Dussen, decent delivery. Quinton de Kock, what do you think of his dismissal?
I think his dismissal was very disappointing. If you went inside the Australian dressing room, I feel, before the game, and they would have had talks about who would have been the big wicket and the wicket that they would have wanted to get early, it would definitely have been Quinton de Kock. He has had a brilliant World Cup. He is currently second place in the runs. He scored a century against Australia in the last fixture. He generally goes off to a rapid start. He attacks the bowlers. He takes the charge to them in the power play. but the conditions today, I feel, dictated that Quinton de Kock had to play another game. He was not up to that. He was bogged down. I think he got 4 or 14 balls before he was dismissed. And his dismissal really sent shockwaves through the South African team. I feel his wicket was such an important wicket, and I don't think Quinton really understood the magnitude of the occasion. This would probably have been his last ODI game. Well, he has said that he is retiring, so it turned out to be his last ODI game. And I don't think he put that sort of importance and value on his wicket today. And he played a poor shot and got out very softly in my estimation, and it really and truly set his team back and cost them.
I support that you say he got out softly, but I think the reason he got out is due to the pressure of the situation and the value that he and the team put on that situation. It was a terrible decision to play that shot. Josh Hazelwood was getting the ball to nip both directions, and it was bouncing. The keeper was collecting the ball above his head. Josh Hazelwood is 6 feet 5 inches. He tried to hit him back over his head for 6 on the rise. It's not, the ball wasn't even a half volley. As a tall fast bowler myself, I get plenty batsmen out at mid-off and mid-on trying similar shots. If he had tried it to Mitchell Stark, I could have understood the shot. Mitchell Stark doesn't get as much bounce as Hazelwood, but Hazelwood's bounce was night and day compared to what Mitchell Stark was getting. He consistently got the ball to carry head high to the wicket keeper. It was very, very strange. His shot selection and the person who he tried against was horrendous. Them above whom came into the game injured. We didn't really get to see the effect of that on his running between the wickets. He only lasted 1 over. David Miller's innings.
I think David Miller played a very good innings. We've spoken before on this podcast of the ability of Henrik Klaassen and David Miller to put together a partnership if South Africa found themselves in early trouble. Funny enough, it was a topic of our discussion last night in the preview, and it's funny how it turned out that it ended up being the situation today. I think David Miller used his experience of playing in these conditions very well. I think he chose the bowlers to target very well. I think his shot selection was very good. And the only thing that David Miller should probably be disappointed in on the day is the fact that he got out just after getting to 100. I feel that if he probably spent some more time at the crease, he could have added 20 or 30 more runs to the South African total. That being said, he's one of the few players that can leave this game with his head held high, because he gave a very good contribution and effort for his team and gave his absolute best in getting the South Africans possibly to the finals.
I think David Miller's dismissal was really emotions. He got 100, he celebrated pretty heavily.
Yeah, I was surprised at the celebration.
And then the very next delivery, he kept going. I thought he should have probably take 1 or 2 balls to regain his composure. And then it's David Miller. He can catch up. 2 balls won't make a difference to David Miller. He can pick and choose when he wants to hit sixes. Another trump card in the Australian bowling lineup. Travis Head, the first ball was horrendous. The second ball was a dot ball. And by the 5th ball, he was on a hat-trick. Travis Head's spell. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Travis Head's spell really shifted the game towards the Australians. They did the damage early inside the power play, and then it almost felt as if South Africa were regaining their place in the game. I think the partnership between Milan Klassen was a good one. Australia almost seemed as if they were scrambling around to find another bowler. Maxwell was bowling, he had bowled a fairly good set, but Adam Zampa, who has been their trump card in the tournament, was really struggling to clasp than David Miller. We know that Klassen is a very dominant batter and is very good on the back foot, and every time Adam Zampa missed his length, he hit the ball into the stands. And then David Miller was very severe on Zampa whenever he looped the ball a bit too much. I felt like those two batters were the perfect batters to bat to Zampa and counter-attack the Australian effort. And the situation really needed a change. The Seamers had bowled a number of overs up top. I think Stark and Hazelwood had bowled 14 overs consecutively between them. So it really restricted the options that Pat Cummins would have had in terms of choosing a bowler. And he turned to Travis Head, and it turned out to be a masterstroke. Travis Head has really impacted this team since he has joined them. He joined the tournament late because he was injured, and he has really had a great impact. I think Klassen will be a bit disappointed in his dismissal. Personally, I am disappointed in his dismissal. You almost feel as if that you have done all the hard work, you have consolidated, you've put together a partnership, and just when you feel like you can change into the next gear and take the game to the Australians, the part-timer comes on, and then you get out in that manner, missing almost a straight ball to the part-timer. It's very disappointing. I wouldn't say necessarily the ball that he got out was disappointing, but I think the whole situation, and it was almost as if he dropped his intensity because he underestimated the bowler, and that was a very critical, it was a bad mistake to make. And then he got out there and Marco Jansen looked as if he almost didn't wake up by the time he got to the crease, and he only faced one delivery. He was outflung LBW, and that shifted the game back towards the Australians.
After that wicket, the lower order scrapped and got the score to 212. Then it was the Australians' time to bat. After 6 overs, they were 60 without loss. Kagisa Rabada had bowled 3 overs, and he had already gone for 4 sixes.
And Jansen bowled 3 for 27.
Yeah, so it was we were saying, well, here goes Australia again. They should just breeze this total off. Then Aiden Markram entered the bowling attack. He was the first change bowler, and the first ball he bowled got rid of David Warner. Whose dismissal do you think was worse, Heinrich Klassen or David Warner?
Both dismissals were poor in my estimation. Seeing how David Warner got out, it was a nothing shot. I was a bit confused at the manner of his dismissal. I was not sure about the shot that he wanted to play. I felt as if Australia were in total control of the situation and the game at that point. I did not think that David Warner necessarily needed to bully Aiden Markram, or if he had planned to, he didn't need to do it as yet, so early into his spell. Questionable shot, and I guess it was a case of all is well that ends well for Australia, but I think that the two senior batters in David Warner and Stephen Smith both would be very disappointed in their modes of dismissal.
Then Mitchell Marsh strode to the wicket. It was a very curious, it was a strange innings from Mitchell Marsh. Markram was bowling to him. He camped on the back foot, he blocked a couple of bars. He left one, it hit him in the pads, it wasn't hitting the stumps. He left another one. And then Travis Head took a single. He went to the next end to face Kagiso Rabada. First delivery decides, I'm going to try and drive this ball through the covers from about waist height. To be fair, Van Edison took a screamer, but the shot was questionable. the approach of his innings up to that point was questionable. He made a duck, 6-ball duck. And then the Australians put on a mini repair with Stephen Smith and Travis Head. Travis Head was dropped on 40 by the substitute fielder, Reza Hendricks, on the cover point boundary. And he got 20 extra runs. I thought that 20 runs was the difference between the teams. In addition to a point that we failed to mention earlier, that the Australians saved about 15 to 20 runs inside their power play when they were fielding. David Warner stopped a couple of short boundaries. Your thoughts on Travis Head's innings?
I think Travis Head played a very good innings. We've spoken so much in this tournament about the importance of the power play for both teams, the team that's batting and the team that's bowling. We found that in these conditions, the team that can really take the power play to the bowling team, they almost always fare better. Seeing a low total like that, Australia would want to dispel any chance of nerves setting into the chase. And I think they had the right approach in trying to come out and bully the South African bowlers. That approach got them to 60 inside 6 overs, and that almost gave them the jump start that they needed. I feel that if they played that power play normally and they were probably at 40 for 1 or so, it would have been a completely different game, but the approach was very good. Travis Head was very aggressive. We know his strengths. He's very strong, square of the wicket. He's a good driver. He also plays the pull shot, and he just really came out firing. It was important that he and David Warner took charge of the situation, and it was important that he continued to attack even after Mitch Marsh and David Warner got out, and he did that, and he really gave the innings the impetus that it needed. He would be disappointed in the manner in which he got out. I think Maharaj bowled a peach to him, but it was also probably a shot that you probably would have wanted to pay a bit more attention and give Maharaj a closer look. But I think he played a very good hand in the situation, and it was a good innings.
I thought his shot was poor as well. It was the first delivery that Maharaj bowled in the game. And he left this a gap that could drive a trailer through it. Then Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne came together. Marnus looked quite at sea. He was playing so many sweeps, not connecting with any of them until the sweep was his downfall. He swept and got out LBW. And then tied first, and it's arguably the worst dismissal of the game. Steve Smith set on 30 from 60 deliveries. You thought Steve Smith is in. It's just like he was batting in a test match. They needed to go out 4 and over from there. Gerald Coetzee came back into the attack. The field was set for bouncers. Steve Smith decided that he wanted to pull a good length delivery. He went straight up and was out caught by the wicketkeeper. Your thoughts on Steve Smith's innings?
Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne got the opportunity to play the sort of knocks that they've been playing in this tournament. They have been pedestrian, I feel. They've sometimes played in situations where Australia has been under pressure, and that may have impacted their strike rates a bit. Steve Smith was 30 off about 60 today. It was a strike rate of 50, very slow. But it was almost what the situation needed, because the situation needed a bit of calm. I think he'll be very disappointed in his dismissal, because he's a perfectionist and he's somebody that always wants to have control of the situations. I think that he probably was out there and he would have thought to himself that he wanted to be the man that would have been at the crease as Australia got the winning runs, and he, I'm sure, is beating himself up over that dismissal. It was not pleasing on the eyes. It was uncharacteristic of Steve Smith, and it was disappointing to see. I felt that at that point, that wicket would have turned the tide of the game, because Maxwell had gotten out previously, and then Steve Smith played that shot. It would have left Inglis and then the bowlers out there to try and get the rest of the run. So I was disappointed in his dismissal. For somebody of his experience and his caliber, it was a shot that was uncalled for.
Glenn Maxwell's dismissal, it was a replica of the first game Australia played against India. He got out the exact same way to Kuldeep. Your thoughts on that? It's Glenn Maxwell, they expect him to attack, so I don't really put much on it, it just looks awful.
I mean, what can you really say about Glenn Maxwell? When it comes off, it's brilliant. When it doesn't come off, it looks awful. He lives by the sword and he dies by the sword, pretty much. The wicket was untimely in the situation, but you also felt as if Glenn Maxwell came in that situation and if he made 30 runs fast, the game would have been done and dusted. So I think it's more a case of execution for him as opposed to shot selection, because I would never want Glenn Maxwell to change the way he plays. I'd probably want him to be a bit more calculated and probably have better shot selection, but you really can't curb his natural instinct and you have to allow him to play how he plays, because that is what allows him to be such an X factor.
Then we had the wicketkeeper and the two fast bowlers. Inglis got 28 from 49. He played a very, very good innings. It was mature, it was calculated. He saw the spinners off, looked as though he was going to score comfortably against the fast bowlers, but he got a good arc and played over it and got bowled. Mitchell Stark made 16, the captain Cummins made 14, and they dragged their team to victory in the end. Let's talk about the South African bowling. The two opening bowlers, how were they for you?
I think they didn't really know how to approach setting the tone at the start of the innings. Rabada was smacked around a couple pull shots. Marco Jansen was also off the pace and he was too full. The Australian batters did not allow them to settle. Knowing how Australia plays and knowing the intent, or you could almost guess the intent of the two batters that were going to come and bat, I feel like maybe the South African bowlers were a bit naive because they should have expected Australia to come out aggressively at them. It almost looked as if they were surprised and they were jumped, and by the time they realized what was happening, Australia were 60 inside 6 overs. And that in a game like this, a low scoring game like this, they really could not afford to have that sort of start, and that really put them back.
Markram bowled well today. He got the breakthrough and went at about 2 and over. He bowled 8 overs, so it was pretty decent. Gerald Coates, his first over went for 15, but he created 2 chances. The two spinners, Shamsi and Maharaj, they were very, very economical. I thought, though Shamsi got 2 wickets, he bowled too many deliveries that started on the stumps, and the wicket was spinning. He bowled a number of wides down the leg side. At one point, I thought the captain lost the plot. He had a short leg fielder and he moved him to a leg slip to support Shami bowling the ball down the leg side. It was that the wicket was spinning that much that cover drives were almost impossible to play. They had an extra cover, and I thought if they wanted some security in the cover region, they could have moved the extra cover a bit squarer and try and force persons to actually play a half drive. Most persons, because of how the wicket is spinning, would not try and play a full-blooded cover drive because they would have to be going too square. So just to encourage them to try and go through the offside, you would have moved the extra cover field a bit squarer. He took 4 or 5 overs before he got it right and started trying to spin deliveries back from outside the half stump, and a number of chances were created outside edges that difficult catches, yes, for the wicketkeeper. Some spin through the gate, a number of LBW shouts that umpires call and some were missing. Maharaj. I thought he bowled well, but let's see what Akim has to say.
I think Maharaj also bowled well. He bowled a very tight spell. It was economical. He took 1 wicket for 24 runs, I believe. My issue with the Maharaj spell is that I feel as if being the #1 bowler in the world, your team is up against it in a World Cup semi-final. It's a back against the wall situations. It's a back against the wall situation. I feel as if you would want a bit more from him in this situation. I know that the conditions favored spin. It was a pitch that was turning. But I almost feel as if that if I was the captain, Temba Bavuma, or if I was the South African head coach, I would feel as if I wanted a bit more, or I would want a bit more from Maharaj and Shamsi in the situation, but more so Maharaj. I felt as if the batters at times had a bit too much time to play some of the deliveries. If you look at the pace that Jadeja has bowled in this tournament compared to Maharaj, he has been a bit quicker. They're two different sorts of left-arm spinners, let me say that. So don't for one think that I expect Maharaj to bowl every one of his deliveries at 60 miles per hour. I don't expect that. But I feel as if the batters had a bit too much time to negate Maharaj, and it probably negated his wicket-taking ability on the surface. I feel that the batters had a bit more time to come down and play the forward defensive shots comfortably, and if the ball was spinning, it wouldn't necessarily rush them into a decision. They had time to comfortably play inside it or get on the back foot and come off strike. So that is my criticism of him. I know it's very tough to criticize somebody that has taken 1 wicket for 24 runs off 10 overs in a semi-final, but I feel as if South Africa were to win the game, they would have had to have gotten more from him inside the middle overs, picking up another wicket or 2 in this situation.
So because I know wickets aren't placed on the pitch for any bowler, I don't have any comments about that. So who are the worst dismissal in this game? Steve Smith or Quinton de Kock?
I think de Kock's dismissal is worse for what he means to the South African team and with what was happening around him and how important his innings would have been. But then again, the counter side of it is that Steve Smith's wicket could have cost the game, and he was the set batter. He was the person that had to take them home. But if I had to choose one, definitely Quinton de Kock. Awful. Awful shot. Awful.
Having seen Australia play 10 games thus far, do you think they have what it takes to roll India over?
I think that India will win the World Cup. I think that they'll win the final. But what I will say is that if there was a team that India would not have wanted to play in the final, it's definitely Australia. They won this World Cup 5 times before. They have the championship medal and the championship know-how. They know how to get across the line and to get things done. This is not necessarily the best team that they've ever brought to a Cricket World Cup. And I felt the same way when they won the T20 World Cup a couple years ago. It was not the best squad, but they know how to win games of cricket, and they know how to win big games and to win big finals. All it requires for Australia in the final is for somebody like David Warner to fire, and then it's a completely different game. We saw how flustered India looked in the last game when they were bowling and Daryl Mitchell and Kane Williams were set, and anything can happen in the final if Australia gets off to a good start. So I back India to win, but I'm sure they would have much rather to play against South Africa.
Do you have anything else to add?
No, that's all from me.
Alright guys, thanks for watching.